Is God a man? If you look at Judaism, Christianity, and some of the other religions, it shows that God is a man. And this is often argued as being simply because the religious books were written by men, and therefore their perspective was skewed by their masculinity, and they chose to depict God as a man to reinforce the power structure, the patriarchal power structure. And this is a valid point, but let's look at it from a slightly different point of view. If we look at men, what can men do? Versus what can women do? Well, there are a lot of things that both men and women can do. Although, if you were around back in, say, the 1950s, the 1940s, what women could do was very much limited by what society allowed them to do. And in some countries, that's still the case. There are countries where women are still extremely suppressed like they used to be in America back in the 1950s and earlier. But if we look realistically, okay, if we're truly honest with the capabilities of men and women, there aren't a lot of things that men can do that women can't do. Off the top of my head, I can't think of anything other than that, well, a woman technically can't inseminate a man. Sorry, if you get what I mean, right? A woman can't inseminate a woman either. Because a woman doesn't have the ability to produce sperm and inject that into a female that's fertile. What can a woman do that a man can't do? Well, a woman can get pregnant and carry a baby to birth. A woman can produce milk specifically for the purpose of feeding her baby. Women can also have multiple orgasms, which I'm pretty sure most men can't do. And there are probably other things about women that men can't do. So what does that tell us about men and women? Now, I didn't mean to imply number one and number two, okay? I'm just two genders in general, okay? Now, obviously, there are the various other genders when I'm talking about biological things like androgyny and things like that, okay? But just to keep this simple, if you take a gender, either one of those two, or even some of the other ones as well, but none of them are complete. So if you say that God is a man, you are thus saying God is incomplete, and therefore God is not perfect. If you say likewise that God is a woman, God is also not perfect because God is incomplete. Therefore, this whole belief that God is a man or a woman is a falsehood that is belied by or negated by the belief that God is perfect, omniscient, all-powerful, and all that stuff. So you need to choose. Do you want to believe that God is omniscient and omnipotent and so on and so forth? Or do you want to believe that God has a single gender? You can't really have both. Okay? Because if you say, well, God can have babies, then God is not a man. Because men, by definition, are unable to have babies. I realize that for some people, this is going to come as a bit of a shock. But really, the argument that God is portrayed as a male because of patriarchal systems is the truth. To assume that God is male is arrogant and ignorant at the same time. I submit that God is neither male nor female because God has no need for procreation. God was not created as half, missing parts that are required to reproduce. Now maybe if we were to live forever, we wouldn't need sexual reproduction. We could use asexual reproduction. But we are not like bacteria or amoebas. We're much more complicated, and we're capable of doing many things that most other creatures on the planet can't do, although there are some. That could give us a run for the money if we would allow it, in some ways. So, I invite you to separate what your religion teaches you into two categories. The categories that maintain the power structure of a particular gender or group, and the other stuff that really is about God. They're not the same thing. And if God were to come down and announce things, God would probably say, hey, look at me. I don't have a ding-dong, and I don't have a cave either. It just makes sense. I'm sorry if this seems like blasphemy, but just because a book was written in the name of God doesn't mean it was written by God. And doesn't mean that there are no falsehoods in it. If you don't believe that, then you are very misguided. Oh, I'm just looking forward to all the flames and the insults that I'm going to get to delete and report in the comments down below. I do look forward, however, to any sensible comments, any debates that are started with me on this topic. Because I like sensible, I like people when they're talking nicely about something, using their logic instead of, oh, you're a dummy, oh, you're, Yeah, well, that's just a lack of maturity, a lack of ability to communicate, a lack of ability to debate. And I realize that some people can't do that, but if you don't have that ability to do it, don't respond. Leave it to the other people who can. Because if you do respond and you start insulting me, I'm just going to report you. So, shut your yaps. Don't type. Thank you for watching. Thank you for considering what I have stated. And I hope it has helped.